South Korea is often called an economic miracle. In just a few decades, starting in the 1960s, it grew into one of the largest and most advanced economies in the world. The country is known for its competitive industries like shipbuilding, high-tech manufacturing, finance, and automobiles. And it did all this while keeping its debt low and managing a challenging relationship with its tough northern neighbor. This success shows us the power of market capitalism, democracy, and private business compared to the different path taken by North Korea, a nation with more natural resources and strong allies, yet much poorer than the South. But here's the twist. While South Korea is a model compared to North Korea, it still faces big challenges when measured against other advanced nations. For example, the recent declaration of martial law and the impeachment trial that unfolded earlier this month are clear signs of serious issues. These dramatic events are just the most visible parts of many deep-rooted problems the country is dealing with. In many ways, South Korea's amazing growth might have been less about a perfectly run economy and more about a miracle that everything held together for so long. To really understand this, we need to look at some key details. So, how did South Korea manage its success despite so many challenges? Are these old issues finally catching up with the country? And how do its shaky political dynamics add fuel to the fire? It might seem like the country's modern journey began in 1953 after the Korean War, when the peninsula was split between communist North Korea and capitalist South Korea. But there's a lot more to the story. For one, the war never really ended. Although an armistice allowed prisoner exchanges and a ceasefire that still holds today, the two Koreas are technically still at war. After the war, South Korea didn't instantly become a shining example of democracy and free markets. The country went through at least 5 different governments, many of which were disrupted by coups, questionable elections, and authoritarian leaders complete with military parades and personality cults. Even if one government had managed to hold power long enough, there was no guarantee that the South wouldn't have turned into a dictatorship like the North. Many of these authoritarian governments followed similar economic policies, using 5-year plans and focusing heavily on big industry. If the martial law we saw earlier is fully enforced, it might just be a return to South Korea's old ways rather than a completely new approach. For a long time, North and South Korea were very similar. In fact, North Korea was once even more productive because it had more natural resources and a direct trading route with major powers like China and the USSR. But over time, key differences emerged, and South Korea became wealthy, while North Korea fell behind. One major advantage for South Korea was the significant help it received from the USA. During the Cold War, the United States provided not just money but also military aid and technology to support South Korea, as it was seen as a strong front against communism. This support was a huge boost for a country that was once quite poor. Even today, over 24,000 U.S. troops are stationed in South Korea, second only to Japan and Germany among countries hosting American forces. Their presence not only strengthens the military bond, but also helps stimulate the local economy through spending and contracts. Of course, while the U.S. benefits from a strategic outpost in the region, South Korea also covers some of the operational costs, like cross-training its own troops. In many ways, this arrangement is a smart, though sometimes hidden, form of foreign assistance. Another key advantage was that South Korea eventually opened up politically by restoring civil rights and holding fair elections in the late 1980s. This change gave the people more freedom and helped the country connect openly with the rest of the world. The shift is often compared to China's economic opening, although China's story is colored by its communist symbols. Deng Xiaoping once said that common prosperity would come by letting some people get rich first. In South Korea, those first to prosper were the well-connected industrial families who controlled the big business groups, known as Chaebols. Companies like Hyundai, Samsung, LG, Lotte, and Kumho have always been private enterprises, but the government picked them to receive special help after the Korean War. This support helped them rebuild domestic industry and made these companies and the families behind them extremely wealthy and influential, often even more than the government itself. When South Korea fully opened up to global trade in the late 1980s, these companies expanded rapidly and turned the country into an industrial powerhouse. They grew rich in the process. The timing was almost miraculous. These companies had built up technical skills, their labor force was affordable and competitive, and China wasn't yet the manufacturing giant it is today. Plus, when Japan lost some of its competitive edge due to changes in currency values, South Korea was ready to swoop in and capture new opportunities. Over time, Japanese low-cost exports gave way to Korean products, and then Chinese goods took the lead. This is globalization at work. Even though South Korea now produces high-tech products with strong brands and advanced technology, the long and bumpy road to get there left the country with many challenges. The huge conglomerates that once drove its growth have now become almost like state-supported monopolies. They mix the downsides of both government-run and profit-at-all-cost companies. One major problem with these giant companies is that they face little real competition, so they can charge high prices, which might hurt consumers. However, because South Korea is so focused on exports, these issues with pricing don't hurt the economy as much as they might in a purely domestic market. Also, these chaebols usually operate in many different areas instead of just one, so they still face some competition within their own groups. For example, while Samsung is best known for its tech products, it also works in finance, insurance, military production, and shipbuilding. There's an even bigger challenge. These mega companies control the job market. They pay much better than smaller businesses, so everyone wants to work for them. Students face intense exams to get into top universities and even tougher tests to land a job at companies like LG, Samsung, or Hyundai. For many people, working for one of these giants is seen as one of the few ways to succeed in an extremely competitive society. This focus on big companies creates immediate economic issues. When everyone aims to work for a few large firms, there's less talent left to start new businesses and drive innovation. Moreover, these huge companies soak up a lot of capital. They take on massive debt to expand into capital-intensive industries like shipbuilding, where building a shipyard and financing the ships require enormous amounts of money. Because they are so large, banks are more willing to lend to them, often leaving smaller businesses with fewer opportunities. Even though South Korea's government debt is low compared to other advanced economies, the debt taken on by these corporations is among the highest in the world. Today, even China shows a lively culture of startups and innovation, something that South Korea struggles with. Another issue is that the economy isn't very diverse. For instance, Samsung's share of revenue was over 22% of South Korea's total GDP in 2022. While this doesn't literally mean Samsung makes up 20% of the entire economy, since GDP measures real value added, it does show that a few companies have an outsized influence on the nation's wealth. This concentration of power has also led to a tricky situation with global trade. Because the Chaebols are seen as too big to fail and receive special treatment from the government, it's very hard for foreign companies to compete in South Korea. This makes other countries less willing to sign neutral trade deals with Korea, which isn't great for an economy that relies so much on exports. In fact, after the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s, the IMF forced South Korea to agree to rules on how the government could work with these giant companies as part of a $60 billion bailout, a huge sum at the time. Today, the weight of these large, slow-moving companies on the Korean economy is clear. Changing their influence seems almost impossible, especially since many people in South Korea still support them for the role they played in building the nation's wealth during tough times. When a country is poor, focusing on a few major industries is often seen as the best way to create jobs, boost exports, and build a business foundation. South Korea was also lucky that the industries it focused on, like technology, smartphones, global shipping, and affordable cars, grew a lot over the past 3 decades. But as these industries mature, they face new challenges. The country is now high income, so workers expect better wages to match rising living costs. Investors are more cautious, and as Japan once lost its edge, China is now stepping up by making even cheaper cars, more exciting phones, and investing billions in shipbuilding. The miracle on the Han River made South Korea one of the most successful economies in the world. However, the deal with these big companies was a high-stakes bargain, a Faustian bargain, if you will, that kept the miracle going for as long as it did. One clear advantage that South Korea still enjoys is its strong political ties. Even though its industries are facing challenges, Western countries, especially the USA, prefer to do business with a trusted ally rather than a rival. But inside South Korea, the picture is more complicated. These massive companies wield enormous political power, which is a key reason they face little scrutiny. While their influence helped the economy grow during boom times, now that growth has slowed, people see that everyone is fighting over a shrinking pie. This growing political instability, as seen in recent events, might just be a sign of bigger challenges ahead as the country struggles to find its way back to its former glory. We try to steer clear of politics on this channel, but if you're interested in a deeper look at South Korea's unusual and sometimes risky political scene, check out our full video on our partner channel, Context Matters. Just click the video on your screen now. Thanks for watching, mate. Bye.